Hi everyone, so I'm back with another Teach Me How. I'm super excited this week that we are going to be talking about one of my biggest weaknesses, which is graphics. So I have a colleague, Kacey, here. She is a freelance health and wellness writer, but she has developed her own brand from the ground up and basically gone through all of the pitfalls and journey of learning how to do it yourself. And whether you are yourself a freelancer or an entrepreneur, you have a startup, we all understand there are these bank of digital skills that you just need to know. And one of them is designing graphics. So graphic designers can be very expensive, and there are ways that you can do it yourself. So that's what we're going to talk today. So I'm excited, and welcome, Kacey.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be doing this with you today. As you said, I'm a freelance health and wellness writer. I write content for wellness businesses and healthcare technology. And so I do not design graphics for a living. I think most startups and small businesses don't have a lot of experience with graphic design, and it can kind of come across as intimidating. But I think it's really one of the easiest ways to get your business message out there. Especially like social media graphics. They are a super effective, cheap way to get started with brand messaging and let your audience know that not only are you open for business, but you're like actively out there and like generating content and engagement. So the flexibility of social media graphics is another benefit, because you can either link it to your website or your blog, or the graphic itself can just be like the purpose of the post. I know I've personally found a ton of value from like solopreneur or small business, sorry, my chair's freaking out, small business social accounts that I follow that use their social media graphics to discuss like really high value topics that matter the most to their audience. Especially now with more people open to how strongly social media affects business and brand messaging. Plus, like more people are home scrolling through social media. If you don't know how to start with social media graphics, it's a really good time to learn. And it's super easy. Because like I said, I cannot say it enough, I'm not a graphic designer. Never took any classes or courses. So I know if I can do it, anyone can do it. Personally, my preference, I love Canva, which is like an online-based graphic design service. It creates all kinds of templates, all kinds of formats for you that you can fill in and customize, or you can create your own from scratch with like, they'll give you the Instagram dimensions, or they'll give you the Facebook post dimensions, and you can pick pictures and quotes and fill in the pre-existing format however you want to, and I love it so much. I'm pretty sure there's like a free version that you can use. I use the free version for most of like my own stuff. I would probably still be using it. I have one client that needs more of the advanced level, like client-facing proposal type formats. But for my own stuff, like you can totally get by with the free version, and I think that's a super like budget-friendly way to start generating your own social graphics. I know some small businesses get really involved with running their business and they kind of forget to promote it. Some clients are kind of like, well, why does a social graphic, even matter? Why can't I just throw something out there and publish it and be done with it? But I think there's 3 important reasons why you want to pay a little more attention to your social graphics. And that's that, they showcase your brand's tone, either in the text on the graphic or in the caption that you write. They create brand consistency, whether you have like a logo that you use on every single graphic, or colors that are like instantly recognizable as your brand colors, or like a particular style that sets you apart. A friend of mine is a mindset coach, and I really love how she, like, every time you scroll through and see a social graphic from her, it's hers. So she uses just like really simple, almost like minimalist technique, but she uses colors in certain ways that it's like instantly recognizable to her and her brand. And the final reason I think they're so important is that they offer value to your audience. You can offer like almost a small portion of what someone can expect to get when they're working with you. I think it's super important to offer value to your client before they become your client. You can offer them that before like they pay you for your service or whatever. And I think that's a really good way to kind of start a strong brand foundation through your social media posts.
Okay, so I think the next piece that would be interesting for people to understand. So if a client comes to you and they have the budget to hire you, they don't have the budget to hire you and a graphic designer and a video guy and all of that, what are the core activities? Like, do they have to decide on colors and fonts? Do they need to, what kind of pieces do they need to create? Like, what does the starting line look like?
Yes. So I did have a client recently who she was a one-woman show, and she did have a logo designed already, but she needed some help with getting her social graphics post out there in a way that she wanted that instant brand recognition. I think that was part of the reason why she had a logo. And so what I did for her was we kind of came up with like a weekly plan. She wasn't really sure how active she wanted to be on social media. She was just still trying to sort that out. So we decided on colors pulled from her logo that would be kind of worked into the social graphic post, whether it was like black and white photography with flashes of color, or if she wanted to do a post that was all text with her brand colors. For example, she had black, white, and red were her colors. So her logo had red in it. I would include like a tiny little like a little snapshot of her logo in the bottom corner of like each post. She wanted to have that. She really loved that logo and she really wanted it out there. So we included that in each post. She would sometimes link her graphic post to her blogs. She had really highly specialized knowledge. And so she wanted to make sure that that was published on her blog as like a portfolio of what she could do for her clients. And I think having the logo, pulling the colors from the logo, and then also keeping in mind like the niche that you're in helps with like, because you don't want to have, she was in a really specialized like oil and gas industry. And so we didn't want to have some like random, I don't know, like restaurant based looking photo or something in the background. And people are like, how does that make me think of the oil and gas industry? I'm not really sure. It's a little confusing. It's a little off-putting. So we made sure that that was consistent with like her niche, her industry. And we just started from there. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It can be as easy as your logo colors.
So what kind of, how do you then decide, do you do a text, do you do a photo? Like, how do you decide to divvy up the way you create social graphics to like, what's an ideal calendar situation? Like in a given week, how many posts should you have if you want to be like active on Instagram or Facebook? And then how should you vary those so that it is kind of it stays interesting?
Yeah, good question. I would say for starting out, probably at least a post a day is a good place to start, because then you're at least consistent throughout the week, but you're not overwhelmed with having to come up with, if you're doing 2 a day for each weekday, oh my God, I have to plan out like 10 different posts and I don't even know how to design the graphic in the first place. So I would say to keep it simple and start with 1 per day. I would say the best thing for getting started with like what topics do you want your social post to reflect is to first think about, okay, what's my audience going to be looking for from me? And I would start there. I think there's probably best times of day to post. I personally still am sussing that out for myself. Because some days I have more engagement, some days I have less engagement, certain times of the day, like the morning, the afternoon. Like if you overthink it, it can get a little to where you're kind of like analysis paralysis, and then you don't even start posting to begin with. You're like, I don't know if I should post this at 10 in the morning or on the lunch hour or in the evening when people are, coming home and looking at their phones again. I don't know what to do. I'm freaked out. I'm just not going to do it. So I would just say once a day, try not to worry too much about what time it is, and think about what your audience needs to see from your specific business. And for me, I like to choose photos that I'm kind of getting more into photos than text writing in the post. And I like to try to choose photos that have like an emotional connection with whatever I'm talking about. So if I have a topic in mind, I see the pictures, and I'm going through choosing the pictures in Canva because there's like so many to choose from. But if I see one that I'm like, if I have a connection with it right then when I see it, I know that that's what is going to capture someone else's interest when they're scrolling through stuff later. So I know if it has an emotional like resonance with me, it's going to have it with someone else. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. So I think that's helpful because it's, I think sometimes people want, especially, like the client you mentioned, if you're in like a very serious brand, like I have clients in like manufacturing, they're engineers, they're like, why in the world would I be on Instagram? Like, because it feels like a lighthearted, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel like a very good platform. So, maybe there's just some market research they have to do too, of like figure out which of your competitors are on these platforms and how are they using them, and then create a strategy. Because the reality is the audience is online somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. And it really helps your credibility to have active social pages on every platform that you can that makes sense for you. Like if you're a one-person show, like you're going to get a little overwhelmed if you have Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and you're doing all the things and you're trying to create original content for all of them. But you can kind of share posts, through different, like I share the same things that I post on Instagram to Facebook. And lots of times I go ahead and try to have LinkedIn in mind so I can just share it to LinkedIn too. Like you don't have to have a brand new graphic for each and every channel that you're a part of, because that's all you're going to end up doing is designing social posts. And then you're not going to have time to do any of your content or like run your business.
Yeah. So, talk to me a little bit about brand consistency because I'm not a designer and like I don't care. Like I would post like Seinfeld memes every day, but my team doesn't let me. So that's probably good. That's not, there's no value to it except that it makes me laugh. I've worked with a lot of brands for a long period of time who kind of jump on trending things. So, now what's exciting is, kind of static images with a neon overlay, or now we want to do bubble letters, or now we want, block text only or minimalist or whatever. Like, what level of freedom should brands feel to play with that versus what level of consistency helps establish you? Like, could you just kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think what I see from a lot of established brands out there and what I try to reflect in my own, being a non-graphic designer, is like a certain level of flexibility, yeah, for sure, to allow for creativity is welcome. But you don't want to change it so much that it's almost unrecognizable, in my opinion. To me, brand consistency is almost like an instant recognition of, like, it's, to me, the goal is to stop that person in their tracks when they're scrolling through, just mindlessly scrolling, and they see something from you and they're like, oh, I like that account. I want to see what they're saying today. And the reason they can recognize it is either maybe you use the same colors in every single post, but you change it up from, like, maybe it's a border on a photograph one day, and maybe the next day it's a quote and the font is in those colors. Or, I don't know, like maybe you do like an infographic and like it's like a pie chart or some type of graph chart, and you use your brand colors in like different shades to highlight the different amounts in the infographic. Something like that, where as long as like one or two factors are consistently the same, whether you have like brand fonts that you stick with or brand colors, or you always have like your little logo snapshot in the corner or something like that. I think as long as there's something like that there that people can visually catch on to stop them from scrolling and to have them engage with your post. I think that's probably the most important thing. Not necessarily, you don't want to have like one day like hot pink and yellow and, you know, orange or something, and then the next day it's different color. Like, you want to have fun with it, but I think there's a certain level of consistency, whether it's like 2 or 3 components that you change and two or three components that stay the same. I don't know necessarily that it matters which components those are, as long as you look at it and you're like, I can recognize that as that's from me, and I think my audience will recognize that that's my work.
I think that's good. And then I think the last thing I kind of wanted to pick your brain about is the whole style thing. So, you know, you understand you have clients in numerous industries, and, you know, we do too. And so it's often I'll kind of start working with a client, and again, I'm not the graphic designer person who ends up making these decisions, but sometimes older brands, niche brands, you know, like I have a client who is like, they're like a law firm, you know, they don't like what they see when they go to social media. And so they don't want the minimalist, or they don't want the whimsical, or they don't want the inspirational. So talk to me a little bit about, like, when you look at the landscape, like, what are your style options? And if you aren't a brand that's like a female influencer, which, you know, can feel like it dominates social media, then what do you choose? And how do you kind of choose something that you actually like as a brand that feels on brand for you? And what are your style options, and how do you choose?
Well, I think it just depends. And again, I'm just pulling from my own personal experience as a non-graphic designer. But for me, the way I make decisions for my brand is I need to have like an emotional connection in some way with the content that I'm sharing. That's like the face of the brand, of my writing brand. If I see something and I'm trying to be like someone else, or I think it doesn't look professional enough, or fill in the blank, like, oh, that just doesn't look, you know, snappy enough for Instagram. I know, like, it's a very saturated platform, and there's a lot of people out there that, like, that's their job, is to be on Instagram. So when you get into that kind of like comparing mindset too much, it helps me to kind of like get grounded and recenter. And it's like, okay, when I see this, how do I feel about it? Because the styles and the options are so endless. I mean, and I'm sure with some clients, you could probably spend all day sending them samples and examples and different mock-ups and things, and they're like, no, I still don't like it. But it all has to come back to whether they feel that connection with whatever they're seeing in front of them. And that's how I kind of make decisions. I don't know how everyone else does it, but I have to feel like I have some type of reaction when I see it where I'm like, yes. Or even if you're like, no, that way you know for sure, like, that is not the direction I want to go. You can kind of cross that off the list, and it's like, okay, well, what are we left with? Maybe like a game of elimination sometimes helps there too, because when there are so many options, it can seem a little overwhelming. But if you can kind of narrow it down to a few that like you don't hate, it helps to kind of plan for like your future future content sharing.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think, you know, sometimes, you know, even like when I do content sprints with clients, we begin with the goal in mind. Like, the goal of this is to rank first page for these 6 keywords or whatever, like if I'm doing an SEO analysis, and then we reverse engineer a strategy. So I think, you know, as people do it yourself graphics, you know, it is always important to remember that the goal of creating graphics for like social posts is shareability, likability, and yet you don't have to compromise, like you said, what you care about or who you want to be in order to do that. Like, social media is not a trick. You're not tricking people into engaging with your brand. If you're going to generate long-term success, then you need to be who you really are. And if, you know, like, one of my clients is like manufactures rubber and does like injection rubber molding, whatever, like, that's who they are and that's who they need to be. You know, they don't need to try to be commenting about living your best life. So I think it's giving people the permission to say, like, this is who you are, and being authentic to that and true to that, and creating a look that best presents that is, should be an enjoyable process. And it should be something that remains, as consistent as possible. But I think it's, to your point, that there is some flexibility and creativity is a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So you would say Canva. Is there any, Canva I know is very like do it yourself, plug and play. You don't have to have experience, which is beautiful. And the woman who created Canva is everybody's goals. She's like some Australian 25-year-old who's now a billionaire.
Who does that, right?
You can relate to that idea. But so, is there any other resource that you use, that you draw on, that you research with? Like, is there any other way you get ideas, or any other platforms you would recommend?
As far as social graphics design, Canva is the only platform that I use, but I do kind of take mental notes when I'm looking at accounts that I follow that I personally get a lot of value from. I kind of take note of, why did that resonate with me so much today? What caused me to stop scrolling and be like, ooh, hey, this one could be interesting, and like stop and read the caption, which is what you want. And it can vary from day to day, which is like what you said, I think, where some flexibility and creativity can come in, as long as, because that's your brand identity. Your identity is more than one static thing. And your consistency is kind of like a snapshot of your color or your logo or whatever. That can be the static point. But I think your brand identity can kind of have a little more flow and can reflect, the developments that the brand is going through that day, that week, that month, whatever. But yeah, Canva is primarily what I use to actually design things, and then inspiration can come from almost anywhere.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, I think there were lots of good ideas for people to take away. And I think, if anything, they can take away the fact that this is a process. Sometimes it helps to hire somebody like you who has this jack of all trades ability to begin to be a support. So all of Kacey's information will be down in the YouTube caption, including her own Instagram feed, which you can check out and kind of see how she has implemented these ideas for her own brand. And then any, contact information if you, resonate with her philosophy here, and the kind of ideology that she just took me through. If you would want somebody like her to take you through that, you could hire her. So I will drop all of her information in the YouTube caption here for you guys to check out, if anybody's interested in contacting her directly. But I think that we are here to support small brands, and that's what freelancers do. So certainly grateful that you jumped on and that you shared your knowledge and your insight with us. It's super helpful.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. All right. Thanks.